No? Now, but what is lost here is the fact that all this distanciation was for the ancient already included in saying this is a lamp. They didn't really mean it, that this is a lamp. Like, again, to go back to Paul Vane, when an ancient Greek said Zeus and so on, he didn't mean it, there is real Zeus. This distance was included. And the reason we have to add all these deconstructionist qualifications, like have the terms often in Derrida are in quotation marks, is that basically we are, like, for example, Umberto Eco has a nice text about love, where he said, till now it was possible to say to your lover, I love you. Now we are so afraid that we need a kind of a qualifying distanciation, like, as the poet would have put it, I love you. Maybe I even love you, or whatever. But Eco makes a very intelligent remark where he says, but in the old days, when somebody said, I love you, he meant all this. These distances were included. So I claim today we are not more cynical, sophisticated. We are much more naive, afraid of this literal belief, which is why we had explicitly to include all these qualifications and so on and so on. So again, the precise question that you are asking, I think that some more radical, it's not a matter of simple criticizing ideology, raising consciousness, etc. There has to be beliefs, these radical beliefs only change through some radical social transformations and so on. It's not a matter of enlightening people or whatever. And here I am very split by the phenomenon of today's religious fundamentalism. Like the idea being, but they do really believe. First, I have my doubts. I spoke with some guy who is specialized in so-called terrorist psychology. And he told me it's much more complex. Like if you take a typical terrorist who is ready to bomb himself, no, they are, again, not idiots. Nobody really believes, you know what we read in our media, oh, if I bomb myself, I awaken in paradise, 72 virgins. First, every Arab knows that this is a mistranslation, no? In original Quran, the term is the term for the best white grape dry raisins, no? And this was mistranslated as virgins. So if you want to be cynical, I like to imagine a terrorist, oh, I blow myself, and then up there, he said, okay, here you have the raisins. No? And he said, sorry, I want back, a mistake. No? This psychologist told me a very interesting thing, that the true reasoning of a suicide terrorist is more something like, I am not sure that I believe, I can prove it to myself by exploding myself. It's a kind of a crazy wager in order to calm his own doubt. On the other hand, fundamentalists, I claim, are doing something horrible. You know what drew my attention? This fact, which maybe explains this a little bit. Do you notice how many fundamentalists or these religious sects use the word science, like Christian Science and so on? This would be an interesting point, what science they mean. But I will immediately end. But my point is that effectively this is why many fundamentalists do not have problems with science. I think they are not believers, they know it in some sense. In the sense that for them, for example, God appeared, reincarnated, all the miracles. This has to be treated like scientific facts. They treat divine, and this is a horrible thing. This is then no longer a religious belief. Authentic religion more is what my friend, an Italian priest, told me. We talked about that Turin shroud, no? And he told me, the most horrible thing that you can imagine for the church is to discover that this really is Christ's shroud. Why? My God. You know what's the first thing to do then? Give me a little bit of blood and let us check it through DNA analysis. Who is Jesus Christ's father, really? No? then you probably get some some Egyptian slave screwing Mary and so on. But he told me, no, we don't want it. That you must have this uncertainty. For him, this was a blasphemy to take, for example, Immaculate Conception as a fact. But I read some fundamentalists who claim, no problem, they even have a hypothesis. Because if we do this, they claim because God doesn't have a DNA, it will be simply Mary's DNA redoubled. But you know what I mean? Like, for authentic belief, which is why I think that belief and atheism do not exclude each other. Belief, for example, if you believe in human dignity, isn't there something totally crazy in it? It's a kind of a it means people are fat, thin, stupid, evil. I nonetheless believe all of them have a certain dignity and so on. This is belief at its purest. It's always something absurd in an authentic, ethically engaged belief. And it's not a question even of religion and so on. I like to quote, for example, tragic lines, everybody knows them, Anna Frank, precisely when she became aware of all the horrors of the Nazis, she wrote in her diary, but nonetheless I believe there is something eternal and good in every human being. This is belief at its most authentic. It's absolutely counterfactual and so on. No? So again, I just wanted, I know I didn't answer you. I hope I did just confuse the issues a little bit. Sorry, I speak too much. Let's do it one more, that it will not be this Stalinist dialogue. Now you want me to do this Zen Buddhist bullshit, like you ask me a complex question, I say clap with one hand or some wise thing like that. Please.
Okay. Thanks. This is the last question? I'll put two. First, simple. I would love to hear your take on the Tea Party in America, just in general, particularly as it relates to the expert culture. And I see it often.
No, I know about Tea Parties. The only thing that I watch here is Fox News, of course. Yes.
Second question is on ethics. In your original points, you brought up some nice critiques of Butler and Levinas.
Yeah.
And the kind of inauguration of ethics as the other, sort of throwing the self out of joint. Yeah. But then you brought in this interesting counter-critique that the positing of a universal suffering other by Levinas and Butler is the same thing that liberals do with the other, and that whole thing. My question is, what's the best alternative? How should we see the other in the ethical situation?
I'm opposed even to notion of otherness. I'm for some kind of universal, I'm very old-fashioned here. I want to rehabilitate the notion of universal solidarity, which is not this abstract humanist solidarity, it's a solidarity of struggle. You know what is for me the other, like I was in India. Let me tell you a story which will amuse you. Sorry for 2 minutes. I had a wonderful time in India where, you know, they have now a big Maoist rebellion, Naxalites, no? And it confirmed, I encountered one of them. I was with my friend in a taxi, and we talked about politics. And the chauffeur didn't understand English, but understood a word here and there, and asked in their language, not in English, my friend who was with me, like, I heard the word, the chauffeur asked him, Naxalit, you know, the Maoist rebellion, like, is your friend, meaning me, for or against? And my friend said for, basically, which wasn't the right thing to say. In India, they are outcasts. But then the guy was fascinated, and it was a very mystical thing that happened, really, almost sacred, and stopped the car and asked me a riddle. And the riddle was pure, dirty, incredibly dirty obscenity, which I loved, of course. He asked me, you know, the best-known image of Gandhi, where late Gandhi, in his almost antique robe, he, with a big stick, he walks from one village to the other, no? What does this photo mean? Now, I knew I solved the riddle. I knew it must be something extremely dirty. I tried to read it in a dirty, and I guessed it. I told him it's obvious. It's kind of a anal sex call, like, I need a young guy to fuck me into my ass. If not, I will have to do it myself with the stick. The guy was fascinated. He stepped out of the car, embraced me. He told me, you are one of us. And wait a minute, now comes the miracle. And then we started to talk, not exchanging dirty jokes, just serious political talk. But you see my point. This exchange of obscenity was a kind of a moment of solidarity.